Jodi, you're going into winter right now, or you're midwinter. We're just hitting the longest day or shortest day of winter for you guys. It's our longest day here in the Northern Hemisphere. You've been in your new greenhouse now for a summer season. You're going in for winter. What are some of the lessons you've learned this year with greenhouse growing in your context?
So last spring, we were developing beds, just doing enough propagation, knowing we could keep ahead with forming new beds. We're creating a new bed, composting it, setting up drip modules. We had to put power into the greenhouse, the whole irrigation setup. We already had the top wires put into the vertical grow. It took us all spring to develop the greenhouse. So we're not having to do the setup work. And then we had a pretty nice summer. We did a lot of projects outdoors as well. And yeah, it's been a really easy season with summer and heading into winter weather-wise. We built the greenhouse for big rain and wind, and the weather's just been super nice to us, which we're really thankful for. And I think I had to train myself to keep going into the greenhouse. Like, we had beautiful days outside, and I'm like, it doesn't make sense to be in the greenhouse, but I had to that was a mindset thing I had to shift.
Is there anything, let me back up. What was the hardest adjustment going from field growing to greenhouse growing, if you had to narrow it down to one thing?
That's a tough question because there's so many benefits by growing indoors. Everything's faster, higher yield, generally good quality. I think we took the season off with the economy down so hard. We still did production that we matched our sales, but we had a big project year. So I think I'm not answering the question directly, but this season we were doing a lot of projects like pouring concrete, doing drainage, putting in irrigation for the new field expansion. And that's always a distraction from production. So we're just real thankful that we could push ahead on projects this year while the economy's down, getting ready for the economy to come back and supplying new customers. I think the challenge was just probably our soil. We're on a hard pan subsoil. We had to develop new beds the soil in the greenhouse is a real challenge. Insane weed pressure. It was grass 12 months ago, super compact. Now we've done that work. The beds are set up permanent, really soft, but we've got insane weed pressure in there like you wouldn't believe. Weed.
Being all the grass that was previously there, or other stuff too?
Yeah, it was past 15 months ago. It was a paddock for the sheep. Yeah.
What's been the most effective way for managing all the weed pressure in there this early in the transition?
This is our first season going back to spring that we've used weed mat, and we're just using it in the greenhouse. It's easy to not like something from the outside that you haven't experienced, but the weed mat has been a godsend. So I've got my basic crop rotation in the greenhouse is a transplanted crop and weed mat, followed by a direct seeded crop, and repeat. So we're just going weed mat, direct seed, weed mat, direct seed. That's working pretty well. We've still got a couple of spots in there where the weed pressure is insane. We're really focusing on our direct seeded baby leaf salad, on getting a jump on a clean bed for that. And yeah, the weed mat's just made a huge difference. We would have been in there full-time weeding otherwise.
With the weed mat, what's your spacing you're using on your lettuce?
I've actually got, I think it's 240 mils, so roughly nearly 10 inch, 9.5 inch. And same, we've burnt all the holes. We've now got all the modules, but I've got two configurations for lettuce. I've got 3 rows and 4 rows, and I'm tending 4 rows is super tight. The outside rows planted right on the edge. I'm generally using more 4 rows in winter now that the growth has slowed down. We also we've got different modules, and I'm working on putting together a spreadsheet that's got, based on my weed mat, how many plants in each module, how many trays I would sow for that. And then we went back to the drawing board with lettuce because we'd stopped growing it outdoors. We had so many casualties to the heavy rain. So we've got our varieties that we did well for us in the past, but we probably took on a dozen new varieties, just seeing what works for us. And we've come out with 3 varieties that are really outstanding. We've got a super fast light green one that's get really big in warm weather. We get 2 cuts off it. Then we've got a more crunchy, crisp green that's slower to grow, but 2 big yields off it. And we've got our standard red that we've grown for about 8 years, which has just been deleted. That one's called Trellex. They've got a replacement, but we're back to the drawing board with that. So we had to trial lettuce again to find what's working. And lettuce has been humping, like real clean, even with the weed pressure. It's the weed mat that's been just a game changer for us in there. And really the salad mix, which is called Leaves and Shoots, has had a lot of lettuce in it. It's been beautiful. Now heading into winter, the growth has slowed right down. We're leaning back on the Mizunas, and you lose one, you gain one. We've just got a new Mizuna variety being released, which we're trialing. We're really excited about it. Cross fingers. So we're heading into what looks like our strongest winter just because of the greenhouse conditions. And it's going back to the John Jevons days. In winter, we would cover crop the whole outdoors and put the garden to sleep. I'd say 2/3 of the outdoor gardens in cover crop, we're pretty much growing everything indoors. For 5 weeks now, every delivery has been from indoors.
I don't know if you have any thoughts on this. Going back to your John Jevon days or the market garden days, growing crops on different densities. So let's say the same soil is equivalent for these comparison's sake. If you grew 3 rows of Salanova in a bed or 4 rows of Salanova in a bed, do you think in your conditions you're going to see a big enough difference in those 2 crops to make a production decision based on it?
As for which way we go, 3 or 4 rows?
Yeah. So is 3 going to be, making this up, visibly bigger, visibly healthier, visibly, or whatever else? Or it might be a little bit bigger, but it's not much bigger. When you look at the comparison between 3 and 4 rows, I think a lot of people standardize Salanova to 4 rows. But I've always wondered, it's one of those things, like how many people try it in 3 rows? And if you do it in 3 rows, where does your yield actually come out? And do you get a healthier, better crop in comparison? Or are you just growing 4 rows because that's what everybody else does?
Oh, sure. And that's why we've burnt holes in our weed mats. You can't buy them pre-made in New Zealand, but that gives us creative license to trial out different spacings, different hole sizes, and so on. So the really fast green lettuce that we've got in the warmer weather, that really needed to be on 3 rows. And it got so big that we were happy because we're cutting it and mixing it. We couldn't let it get too tall. And so in the warm weather, that was really happy on 3 rows. I guess our bigger lettuces, warmer weather, 3 rows, and now we're looking at 4 rows for winter. And it's super tight 4 rows. We've got tiny paths. Our paths are 1 foot, 30 centimeters. So we've got to manage it. I think we're leaning towards 4 rows for winter. And the challenge in summer though is 4 rows. There's no space. If you've got a taller crop next door to it that wants to spread out, I've learned some lessons with not a lot of crops that we grew this summer. We regretted not training them vertically from day one. And then we were like, oh, it's getting big and it's spreading out. It's leaning on the lettuce. Let's try and train it. And we were way too late with it. Even crops like bush beans, chili peppers, we were way too late training them. We didn't think that with the shorter crops, we didn't think, let's grow them, let's support them vertically. And we'll be doing that next year. And also a lot of the longer season crops, going less rows, like with 2 rows of chilies, whereas 3 rows of bush beans. We overdid it. It was too tight.
And too tight, that could mean several things. Pain to work with, poor plant growth, disease. What did too tight result in? All of them?
Yeah, all of the above, especially the management. The bush beans were looking beautiful and then they got massive and then they were either leaning on another crop. You couldn't get up the path. And I was like, a dwarf bush. I've never trained a dwarf bush bean vertically. And we were doing a lot of vertical crops this year. And, now at some point I'm going to write a list of all of the new possibilities with the greenhouse. Like we've never grown eggplants or aubergines. this summer we will. We were growing pole beans. We've got a 3-meter top wire, and we've been mucking around with first season with the Quippler training system for Tommies and Cukes. And we've been mucking around with the tomahawks as well, where we would, say for pole beans, we would pull the white string off there that's not compostable and wind on, we call it jute, or it's like a compostable brown string. So that at the end of the season, you don't have to throw everything away to the trash, which we never have, or we were having to unwind a crop off the synthetic white string, which was a lot of work. Now we were just going through and saying, crop's finished, chop it down, roll it up, pull it out, and flip the garden from summer to winter way quicker. So the time that we used to be separating a crop from the vertical white string, we're just smashing it down, getting it out, flipping the beds, and getting into winter production quicker.
Whole beans, bush beans, not uncommon in the market garden space, but maybe less common. How did that fit into the farm, market-wise, finance-wise for you guys?
I think it's like everything. When it's good, it's worth doing, and when it's not, you really start questioning it. So, like bush beans,
was it good or bad?
Yeah, it was not too good. It was bad. It was bad. Bush beans, I would grow them vertically for support and drop it from 3 to 2 rows, just so they stay upright and I've got space for picking time. And the pole beans, we got a 3-meter top wire. I was really excited with the pole beans to grow them on the compostable string. There's no turning to do, easy to terminate end of the season. But the commercial variety we were after wasn't available from 2 seed companies. And so I went heritage, and these things were above the top, were trying to grow out the top of the greenhouse at 4 meters high before we were able to pick fruit off the bottom. And it was just insane. We're doing 2 rows, which is okay. But the challenge, and it's the same with the tomato, the challenge was they're not ready to pick down at ground level. And we needed to be dropping them weeks and weeks ago. So I'm looking for a commercial variety that just doesn't get as tall. Like that I'd like to be able to drop my beans like the cucumbers.
What would have been the market outlet for those? The grocery stores that you're in?
Yeah, grocery, retail, and restaurant. Like our bush beans, we grow a heritage. I've been saving the seed off them over 2 decades. The restaurants buy them in 2.5 kg bags, and it's $20 a kg. If the pickings, if they're good and the picking's fast, it's a nice add-on to the weekly turnover. But if the picking's not good, and Curtis used to talk about this too, knowing when to call it and just to say, hey, it's not working, let's just cut our losses and get it out. So we'll do beans again next year, but we're going to totally change how we're growing them, and especially the vertical ones, the variety.
So the greenhouse opens up a lot of possibility for you and your climate, being windy, drizzly, cooler potential summers. You mentioned eggplant was off the table in the past. What other things are now, what does the greenhouse open you up to? What crops does it enable now that you have it besides eggplant for summers, not winters?
So the new greenhouse currently has 20 beds that are 15.5 meters. That's roughly 55 feet. And then our other greenhouses, we only have 8 growing beds in total. So that was our limitation. A couple of thoughts there. We've been limited in the past with having to go, our summer crop rotation has been cucumbers this year, tomato, cherry toms next year. We're now able to rotate around our beds a lot more with those summer crops. We've got the space to diversify in summer, start investigating other crops, which we always do slowly. We're doing spinach in the greenhouse as well. One is lettuce. That's been really nice bringing that one back on, and we still wash it, but it's really clean. Not a lot of rot underneath the lettuce like we were getting with the big rains outdoors. So yeah, we're able to have more rotation, more diversity, and just keep working. I'm not going to bed following the weather forecast anymore. Like, when's the rain going to pass? When can we get outside and lift tarps? When can we do the work? We just keep on growing, keep on going indoors. So yeah, the most production's indoors going into winter, and outdoors, probably 2/3 cover crops was the beds that we composted before winter and early autumn, fall. We've composted and prepped and tarped so that as we need to sow our winter successions outdoors, we can just lift the tarp and plant whenever we get a fine spell. But yeah, the weather's been easy, unheard of.
If you look back at the year that was, how would you summarize this year in a sentence or two?
So there's two things going on: double recession and big development year. So yeah, sales are down. That's not ideal. So we just took that time to have a big push, knowing as soon as the economy returns, we're already busy at our current sales streams, and we've got a new supermarket coming on, and looking at just entertaining the idea in the future of wholesaling, probably on the other side of winter, and just starting with a couple of crops that we know we can do big volumes of, like cucumbers. We only grow 2.5 beds of cukes, pretty much one succession. We're re-looking at that. We struggle to sell them, Diego, whereas if we can wholesale them, just totes of cukes straight to the wholesaler, and they move them for us. We're really excited about a couple of lines that we think we can really increase our volumes with.
Yeah, that'll be a big game changer for you, because in the past, for newer people, you've sold to restaurants, you've sold to small grocers, to markets. So going wholesale is something, I don't think, from our past conversations, you've never sold wholesale in the past, have you?
No, probably the only thing similar would be twice a year we have a caterer come to us like, hey, we've got this big event in 10 weeks. We need big volumes of salad and root veg. And yeah, we haven't had a catering gig for a while. And there's so many other growers to be able to learn from. Like when Curtis quit the farmer's market and went to the supermarket, a lot of people were upset with him. That made it easier for us when we did go to the supermarket. It wasn't fear of the unknown. A friend's farm in Australia, 50% of their turnover for the last 2 seasons has been wholesaling. And so being able to talk with them and get through that fear of the unknown and look at, hey, it could be a good thing. So our markup in retail is 15%, but we're consignment. So we're taking the risk. If it doesn't sell, we return it. The wholesale are looking at 30% margin with a 2-day lead in for orders, and we just have to deliver to them. And that gives us access to everyone that serves food in our wider Taranaki region, which is about, if you're driving, it's about an hour and a half, 2 hours from the top to bottom and from east to west. They can put a $5 item anywhere, anytime, 6 days a week.
How many people live in that region?
I'm not sure of the total Taranaki region, but New Plymouth, the biggest town, is 80,000 people. But then there's lots of smaller towns where people come in to work. And then in our southern region, Hauora is the bigger township, but there's food outlets everywhere. We think of wholesaling to restaurant, but the wholesaling company are delivering to soccer clubs, to rest homes, anywhere that serves food.
What were some of your big fears of wholesaling in the past before you started looking into this?
Volumes, working with what you could see as the big beast. The business owner I'm talking with has been fantastic. Second meeting, they came through the farm. They're looking at everything we supply them. It'll be our brand. It'll be Roebuck Farm. They won't just amalgamate our stuff with other stuff and be like, oh, someone ordered lettuce. We've got Roebuck today, but next week we don't. We're not just putting our product in alongside generally the vertically grown hydroponic greens. So we're able to keep our story of what we do. And that also gives access to restaurants that want small regular volumes of ours, that they can even put us on their menu. We've always had restaurants come to us wanting small volumes, and the logistics. We would love to be on your menu, but how do we get a small volume of product to you when it's an hour and a half drive? We've just been like, it's available at our retail stores, quite a lot of them already shop there. So we've got a lot of restaurants buying small volumes from our retail fridges. It really gives us accessibility to everyone, which we're pretty excited about.
Was the volumes, I think a lot of people with wholesalers might find they're going to want a ton of product coming at them. Is this one flexible so they can work with what you can produce?
Yep, for sure. And then if we don't have the product, because we've still got 8-9 years of loyalty with our current outlets, they've got they've got accessibility nationwide to product from everywhere. So they're not worried about, hey, if you're short, you kind of leave us without, that they can pull product from anywhere. This is an interesting one. So the microgreens that they're getting come from out of our region, and they're 50 grams in a punnet. And so they've got restaurants that they're delivering one punnet 6 days a week. And I got a sample and brought it home, and I'm not trying to just the big under lights growing systems, but the logistics of when it's harvested, grown under light and then harvested, and then it has to go to another region for dispatch to be distributed to another region. The food miles don't add up to shelf life. And so the sample they showed me that was about to be dispatched, I brought it home. I wasn't going to eat it. And the quality of our microgreens that we return after day 9 in retail was better than what they're about to put out. So they're pretty excited that a restaurant won't need 50 grams a day when they can get whatever 300 grams twice a week. And also knowing if the restaurant was quiet that week, that the salad's still good the following week, which really helps with less wastage for the restaurateurs as well.
Do you deliver your stuff packed? Do you have to put it in retail packs?
For the wholesale salad, yes. I don't think we'll have to with cucumbers, so we're pretty excited about next season. If we can move cucumbers, because we know we can grow them, just delivering totes and totes of cugs. They can do the packaging as well, but generally the microgreens we would be looking at selling them in small units, but we're 500 grams usually for our microgreens. So in the wholesalers setup, which is phenomenal, they're not going on the road in their trucks with, say, crates and crates of Roebuck Farm microgreens. They're going out with preset orders. So there might be 4 crates going into a restaurant that could have potatoes, microgreens, the whole range in there. So they're putting their orders together before dispatch.
That opens up a big opportunity for you, because from talking throughout the year, it's been slow. And this gives you a chance for another outlet. Are they indicating anything in terms of quantities? Is it like, hey, give us as much as you can grow, essentially?
So I met with the business owner first. They showed me around their plant, and then the second meet was on the farm with the produce manager. And yeah, it's awesome for them. They just know all the stats. Like they move 50 kilograms of salad mix every day, 6 days a week. So there's 300 kg in total. The microgreens volumes weren't big. They're delivering 50 grams 6 days a week. We're really interested. We know we've had a lot of restaurants coming to us for years, and we're just like, we can't manage the logistics of getting small amounts long way away from us. So everything's currently within 10 kilometers of the farm for our deliveries. So we're really excited to work with a logistics company. And we're looking at, what do we do a microgreens grow out? And just for the first delivery, where we can tell the story, give every food serving place in our region a sample so that they can try them, see how long they last in the taste, and then see what happens from there. So currently the microgreens sales turnover is not massive, but we're pretty interested in seeing what's the potential there.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear. Really changes things a lot. So this opens up now new crops, right? Like cukes, you dial that up, you start growing a bunch more, and it starts to change the farm in terms of crops you're growing and the layout what everything's looking like.
Sure. And talking with other businesses at the moment, because the COVID bill for New Zealand was 50 billion, and Cyclone Gabrielle, which came last February, the bill from that was 40 billion. So that one cyclone almost was as significant as COVID in total. So people are calling it a double recession, and we don't know when things will return to normal. Definitely the economy is tight. We know when it comes back, we're already busy with our current stores. The new greenhouse is a big game changer there. So the saying as we went into, back in the day, we went into COVID was, we've all got to pivot. What I'm hearing business owners say at the moment is we've got to move sideways, which means we've got to just do whatever it takes to keep open and keep moving forward, keep our staff on, but we've got to transform or change. And yeah, we're looking new supermarket wholesaling. We've got different crops we can grow now for spinach. Summer's a totally different thing with the greenhouse. So we kind of, to recap, massive season this year for us, just doing projects for the upcoming seasons. We're going to expand the greenhouse as we can afford it, but we've already put in the next set of posts. Once we're ready for that, then they're substantial. We can just purchase the arches, put them together. We can get the next greenhouse bay up super quick. We've already got irrigation in there. We're developing the last flat land we have that was grass. That's got irrigation in and is in cover crops at the moment. So we just took the chance this summer to push ahead and get set up for the future. Big drainage behind the greenhouse, just so when we have wet weather, we know we can get the water away from it. And yeah, we didn't spend a lot of money. It was mostly labor to do most of this work. And we know in a normal year, we don't have the time to do that when we're harvest plant, deliver, and repeat.
Yeah, I think a lot of the shows that I've done and maybe other people do in the farm space, it's really highlighted, hey, here's how well we're doing. And I'm not saying you're not doing well, but it's definitely, from talking to you over the years, this has probably been one of the slowest years for you that I can remember talking to you, right?
Oh, absolutely. We're our shortest day now, so we're 21st of June. Going right back to spring, I didn't see it coming. That's when the economy really dropped. Like first time ever, because we're consignment at the supermarket, but it's not been nothing, but we've had a couple of deliveries where we're just like, whoa, nobody is spending nothing. And they're really making choices. And we had a couple of deliveries, and it's not easy. 1 week I returned more product out of my supermarket fridge than I stocked. That's not rocket science. That's going backwards fast. And seeing some new patterns. The school holidays, the 2-week school holidays, the second week of the holidays, the weekdays, that's when our sales just handbraked. And now it's like pulling a lot of product out of the fridge. This never happens. So the weekdays, no sales. And then the weekend before school went back, we just got smashed, like a double fridge, $2,000 of product in there sold in 30 hours. So we've got to be flexible with the patterns. The patterns are not consistent. We can still have a fridge hammered in 24 hours, which we love. There's nothing more motivating than getting a photo of your fridge hammered and you're like, let's get more product back there. And there's nothing worse than producing stuff you can't sell, which is not something we're not familiar with. So yeah, to come back to your comment, our turnover's been increasing by 40,000 a year every year. This year, I'd have to really crunch the numbers, but we're probably sitting at 50% of the turnover that we were at last year.
Yeah. From a standpoint of just owning a business, how do you maintain a positive attitude and not walk off the proverbial edge?
I just think we're not going to be like this forever. We rode through to get through that one. It's really positive. I think you've got to lead by example with your team, and we're just transforming. We're looking at, obviously, what we're doing at the moment isn't the right fit. It might be again in the future, but we've just got to change. So yeah, so we're at the shortest day which is really the start of our winter. in a normal year, we would never entertain taking on a new supermarket going into winter, but we are this year. And we know next winter, we're going to be strong. Next summer and again next winter, we're going to be stronger again. And we're really excited about the new supermarket. Wholesaling, we're just starting that conversation. We might start with micros during winter, but we're probably going to wait till spring. I think never know what's coming tomorrow. We're not giving up. It would be easy just to leave the farm, go on a world tour doing education and say, let's rethink this at some other point. But no, we're determined to make it work. We know it's not going to always be like this. And the farming is a classic saying, it's a lifestyle. It's something I totally love. Being a food producer is for me, one of the most rewarding things. We're just going to make it work.
Is part of this being just financially prudent in times when it's good so you can last through this time?
Yeah, 100%. If we were going into the economic downturn with financial security, be a whole different thing. We've launched another stacked enterprise at the end of last year. It was a 2-year build, but we've built a beautiful tiny home and we've got that on Airbnb. That's been really nice. So it's not a big income, but especially during the warmer months, we've had income coming through the tiny home. And so there's about $80,000 spend over 2 years, and the greenhouse was $110,000 spend. So it's the perfect storm. We just put $200K into the business in 2 years, and we did it without a bank loan, not knowing we're going into a double recession. Tanya, my wife's finished teaching last year. She's full-time on the business too. So it is what it is. If we could have planned it all, we would have done it way different.
Yeah. And it's at this point, it's ride it out and make decisions that keep you afloat now. Explore all options. I'm sure like everything's on the table, right? That's why wholesalers came about, and it's let's look at that. Fortunately, you have your greenhouses now, which you didn't have in the past. That opened up a lot of options crop wise, so you can adapt to that. But yeah, going back to what I was saying a bit ago of just a lot of these stories are super positive. And I think for the most part, since I've been podcasting in the US, we've been in a expansion. Like there hasn't been a recession. There was the whole COVID thing, but for food, that actually, I think, was steroids to the food scene for anybody growing local food. So the economy might have stepped back, but if you were growing local food, like everybody was suddenly your buddy. And eventually the US is going to go into a recession at some point for some amount of time. And that is going to mean less people are potentially buying local food. People are trying to save on food. So maybe they're not buying from farmers markets and things like that. And you always need to keep, I think, one eye on that is what if it turns tomorrow? That's not to say I'm, a gloom and doomer or anything, but if you always act like things are going to be amazing, then you're going to be totally screwed when things aren't, because you haven't prepared, you haven't thought of it, or you get too overextended in one direction. And that's I was in finance and I saw this a lot in 2008 in the crash it was boom in a good way. People get overextended. They borrow money. They're on margin. The market corrects the other way. And suddenly people are jumping out of the proverbial window because life is now dramatically different and a lot of money goes by fast. So for the American farmers, I think this is a good lesson of it might not always be good. That doesn't mean it's terrible, but there's going to likely be times, seasons, years where they are not as good as they are for you right now. You can adapt to that.
I think that humans are a funny bunch. We seek innovation after a crisis. So, good things are going to come from this recession. We could be in a very different scenario right now if we had have taken a big bank loan to do the greenhouse plus interest on it. We paid for the greenhouse up front. We don't have any debt. Tanya and I don't have credit cards. Our mortgage is pretty insignificant. We've got a financial coach, and we've been putting a lump deposit on on the farm mortgage every year, and knowing that actually cut our mortgage term in half, which was going to make us mortgage free with 51, mortgage free by 55, 56 years old instead of 70. And we're really focused on getting rid of the mortgage, but this year we're just making the mortgage payments. Things are tight. We've got to choose the extra 10, 15 grand we're putting on the mortgage. We spent that this year on getting ready for future seasons with the expansion of irrigation to the new field, the new posts, and to expand the greenhouse. We're not in a scenario where we've leveraged bank finances, and now we're in a scenario of interest rates going up, and how do we even just make those repayments for an infrastructure that we don't even have sales from? That could be a reality, and it's not. So yeah, we're doing some, compared to last winter, some nice volumes of salad from indoors. And we're really excited to see, especially as the day length increases, and we're set up for a much stronger spring than last year. We're not having to do all that development work. We're just focusing on production. You were excited to see how many more people we can feed as things change.
I think you're right on. The innovation comes at time of crisis. Money is an easy way to solve problems. If you're having a problem, the easiest solution is to go buy something that you think will solve your problem, or at least it makes you feel a little better that you've done something. When you don't have money, or when there's a crisis, or some combination of the two, that's when it forces you to think outside the box. When you can't buy an off-the-shelf solution, it's now based on what I see before me, the data, what could I do? And that's where I think the art of business is made. It's where things are invented. It's where new business models come about. It's where businesses change directions. Because it's in those times too where you have the people that, when everybody's forced to adapt, can, and those that can't. And those that can't go away, and those that can stay to live another day. Pulling back from finance, the guy I used to work for, now I don't know if this was legit happiness or him just putting on a face for everybody, but when things got bad in the market, he'd get excited because it was his chance to buy something that was now way cheaper than it was previously. And he could take advantage of that, knowing that these things always work themselves out in time. And Warren Buffett's, his famous saying is that the best time to buy is when there's blood on the streets. And I think farming and a lot of businesses this way, when it's hard, that's where a lot of people make their bread and butter. It's where you get customers. It's where if you stay in business and you service other customers and work with other customers, like your wholesalers and your restaurants, when they're having a slow time, then when things get good, it's just more for now everybody to share. So yeah, it's interesting and I think very positive hearing your experience of how you're going through all this.
Same. I've been really, really focused on keeping positive this season with my team, especially. If I roll out of bed and turn up late to work and that just destroys the team. And then nobody's got any hustle and the dynamics change. And so we've kept it just real positive. And I've had to remind my crew a bit that, about the recession. They understand it, but really that's driven a lot of our decisions that we've made this year. And I was a little late on seeing the recession hit. It's interesting looking at the field at the moment, although the farm's grown, but outdoors looks like it did 15 years ago. Cover crops everywhere. We we're using the 5-row jang with planting all our cover crops. Even the new field we're developing, that's in cover crop, just loving that. So we put in a ton of buckwheat, followed by daikon, followed by grains, and everything has come out the garden and into the compost. We've made an insane amount of compost last summer for next season. We've never been in this position going into winter, sitting on all this compost, all this fertility for next year's grow out, which firstly will go into all our greenhouse production, and then it will go into the new field development as well. Yeah, we're all in the same scenario here at the moment. Times are tight, you're just going to make the most of it.
I think the attitude thing you hit on there is the big one, because that's key. When things are going well, we'll start here. It's hard to be negative. And everybody's happy, everybody's making money, it's all good. It's when things don't go well, that's when it's really hard to be positive, and it's really easy to be negative. And if you were doing, I'm making this up, $200,000 in sales last year, and this year you're at $90,000 in sales, that could be very hard not to beat yourself up over that, even if you know it's not your fault, it's the economy and that type of thing. But the gloom and doom scenarios can set in of, where's this going to end? How are we going to survive? What are we going to do? So just having that positive mindset, and I don't mean that in this woo-woo way of, yeah, it's all good, we'll ride it all out, dude, just keep going. But it's, hey, we acknowledge that it's a challenge, but we have to find creative ways to stay in business. We have to find creative ways to grow. We have to find creative ways to save money. We have to find creative ways to survive and thrive in what could be our new economy for some unknown period of time. That's what I mean by the positivity of, it's not throwing in the towel. And like you said, hey, I have to do it for staff too, because I think emotions flow down the leadership line. And if you're late, if you're depressed, if you're bummed out, anybody working with you is, man, if Jodi thinks this is bad, like he owns the business, we only work here, like we're totally screwed.
So I heard a podcast a couple of years ago with Brian Bates from Bear Creek Organic Farm, and it's phenomenal. Say going into COVID, and I've watched a lot of farms. Ray Tyler, the same, that they've made massive transformations on their business model, and they're not all the same. But I really liked Brian talking about the changes they went through. He never saw it coming, and he talks about new Brian trying to convince old Brian. And I'm the same. If I walked around the farm 4 years ago, or 5 pre-COVID, I wouldn't think would be ever have this greenhouse up, be in 2 supermarkets entertaining wholesaling. I think the transformation that I've seen across the board globally it really excites me, seeing what the changes others have made. Ray's doing some phenomenal work at Rose Creek Farm. I worked there in 2018, and all I can say is the farm is completely different now. You wouldn't recognize it. And yeah, really, that's really inspiring, seeing other people's successes and where they caught themselves by surprise. So I guess I could be saying now, if new Jodi was trying to convince old Jodi, there would have been some resistance.
That's it. I never would have guessed we'd be selling microgreen seeds and row cover and all these other things 6 years ago. I thought it was paper pot all the way, and we'd go in other directions that we, explored and never went in. And it's taught me, like, the business that you start might not be the business that you finish. So you could fall in love with this idea of farming. That's very broad, right? That could be so many things. And it could be, we just want to grow salad mix. But then along the way, you find something you want to do. And if there's demand there, the market forces you to change. You end up with that extreme example. You grow blackberries or something, and you're crushing it growing blackberries. That's where it takes you. But yeah, I know I've had to adapt for sure. It hasn't been easy. It's definitely been a challenge. Some of it's been direction we wanted to go. Some of it's because it's what we had to do to stay where we wanted to be in the marketplace. And I'm the same way. Old Diego would have never predicted this and probably would have said, no, I don't want to do that. Where the new me is now, I don't know. I find myself, maybe you do too, I'm always looking at opportunity now, much more than I was in the past after I had to adapt. It's once I made that switch, it's now everything's potentially on the table. That doesn't mean shiny object syndrome where I'm chasing every new thing, but I'm not instantly dismissing it. Does that fit with our business? Does that fit with our culture? Does it make sense financially? Does it work with our customer base? And if those things start to be yes, it's let's take a deeper look. Where I think in the past, a lot of times it would have been like, whatever, swipe right or whatever it is.
I guess bringing it back to the field production, I still love my working day. Everything I do on the farm, all the activities, it's a total pleasure to be farming. And we run a few big events earlier this year. We had a David Asher, the cheesemaker here, doing 2 5-day cheese making courses. Anyways, I had a Hawaiian lady came over and did both events. She stayed on the farm with us. She's 80.
Wow.
And she got more energy than a 30-year-old. Vibrant, just smashing it. And when I said to her, because I got asked this question this year as well by a person, what's your secret? And the secret is I love what I do. And that's when it's not like going to work. So I'm still working the hours, Diego, without the turnover, but I chose to put the hours into development work last summer and into Tanya's making a lot of content. Tanya worked a lot this year on the business, whereas I was running the business in the field. Tanya was working on the business because we had that a little more time to focus on that. But yeah, I've heard Rob Rock recently talking too about look at your friends and look at their day jobs, and hopefully they're happy loving what they're doing, but maybe it's not. And I skateboard to work. It's not heavy lifting, hard grunt work. It's diverse. I'm doing different tasks all day. I think we've got to look at why we're farming, and that's if you love what you do, you're whatever, living the dream. But I read in Ben Hartman's new book some really nice quotes in there, and he said the Buddhists consider work a spiritual activity. And so if you ain't having fun at work, that's a big part of your life that, you're not having much fun. You got to look at making some change. So still love watching all the growers around the world, the changes they've been making. And that's the benefit of technologies. You can see what people are doing in their agricultural businesses. And so all these little changes, super excited about. Random comment, really enjoying the Quippler, the vertical growing system. We're just smashing it with the cucumbers. So quick to exit at the end of the season. Wish I knew about these things earlier. Still not got there with the tomatoes. We're on the Quippler. We haven't nailed it like we have the cukes. And I'm talking with farmers in the evenings all the time. I just love it. And I'm like, it would be great to be able to grow the tomatoes on an angle on the Quippler. And I keep telling myself, I've got to terminate the first 3 fruit trusses so that I can lower them to start picking up higher, because if our tomatoes get too tall and we're still waiting to pick at the bottom. Anyway, I was on a phone call and I said, would it be great to be able to grow the Quipplers on an angle? It was with James from Active Vista. And he said, funny that I was just on the phone to a Queensland grower. So that's Northern Australia, super warm, big greenhouse grower. And the top wire, he's got barbed wire, which has got like little stars every 30 centimeters or something sticking out, which means the top of the Quippler can't slide. You can slide it along and it's going to grip and hang there. And he's got all of his tomatoes growing on an angle. And I was like, that is such a game changer. Quippler ain't really thought of that one in 25 years. Next season, we're changing our top wire for our tomatoes. And that could just be, that little detail could be the difference in crushing it with tomatoes. Our tomatoes are okay. We know we can do better. Yep. Love the innovation and change in this space and seeing what everyone's doing everywhere at all different scales.
Yeah, it's love what you do, like you said a bit ago. And let's not confuse that with love what we do and not make money, right? That's a gardener. This has
Yeah, true.
It's
Yeah.
got to be a business, right? And I guarantee you'll love your business and what you do if you're making money more than if you're doing it and you're not making money. So yeah, and I like that thing of that you said, Rob said, look at what your friends are doing. I think hopefully, I know for sure, unless you're a child who's born into a market gardening family and you're being co-opted to work on the farm, everybody who's got a market farm chose to work on that farm, chose to start that business. So remember, that was your choice. Hopefully you enjoy it because you got to pick it. And if you don't enjoy it, then something got screwed up along the way.
So to come back round to the greenhouse, we've had some pretty nice weather. Like, it's cool mornings. We had one early frost in May. So that's mid-fall. No frost since we only usually get one frost a year. But if the sun's out, it's been in the 20s, 24 degrees in the greenhouse yesterday, which is, so the top part of New Zealand, which is warmer, Kaitaia, it's not 24 degrees outdoors there. So it's actually 24 degrees in Brisbane, Northern Australia, outdoors in the day. It's kind of during the warmer part of the day. It's Brisbane in my greenhouse. The nighttime temp still drops, but yeah, I can see all the benefits of the greenhouse work. I've just been through Jean Martin's new book, The Winter Grower, revisiting Elliot Commons' winter growing, even though we don't have the hard winter. Just looking at all the benefits of growing indoors. Ray Tyler, completely undercover. I think, yeah, we're just in the unfortunate scenario, Diego, of our greenhouse is engineered for insane winds, 70-mile winds. There comes a cost with that, or we'd be like Ray Tyler, all undercover.